and then we get full. And if all goes well, there's Graham too. Awesome. I feel like this is episode number 20, Exit Live Show, Graham. And I feel like we've got the
Then
hang
I've lost
of the
count. I mean,
technology bit. What?
I said I've lost count, but I forgot to click the enter webinar button, so I'm sitting there oblivious. I'm here now. So.
I was just saying, like, now I feel like we got the hang of it and we know what we are technically, at least technically doing with this show, but there you go. Awesome. Well, let's do a quick introduction and then we officially get started. So, welcome to the Master Your Exit live show powered by The Big Exit. This is episode number 20, by the way. So, we've been going around the block for a little while now. So, my name is Lynn, in case you don't know me just yet. And together with Graham, Stephen, who's here on the show as well, will be your hosts for today. And on this Master Your Exit live show, we bring practical insights, expert interviews, interviews with exiteers as well. We'll show tools and do demos, basically all the good stuff to help small business owners like yourself prepare for your big exit. This live show airs every Tuesday at 7 a.m. in Los Angeles, 10 a.m. in New York, or 3 p.m. in London. So, no matter where you are in the world, you can come and join us live. We keep every show short and simple, around 30 minutes maximum. So, today will be not an exception to that. And if you're tuning in live on our YouTube channel or on our LinkedIn channel, thank you so much for joining us. Awesome. If you want to ask questions directly to Graham or myself, it's better to join our virtual studio. And if that's something that you want to do, hop over to our website, thebigexit.co/master your exit show signups. And there you can sign up for one of the next episodes that you would like to attend, and you can send in your questions from there, basically. That's for the intro. On today's show, or in today's show, Graham and I are going to have an open conversation about the things that we've done, the things that we are doing, or the things that we are thinking about doing in the future to remove ourselves as founders from the sales part of our businesses. Now, why do we want to have a conversation around that? Well, the main thing is that owner independence. So basically a business that can run on a day-to-day basis without the owner being, involved in that. That's a crucial thing that needs to happen to make a business sellable and more valuable. And Graham and I are really big on practicing what we're preaching. So, whenever we speak to small business owners in their process of preparing their business for sale, one of the things that we always mention, obviously, is creating some level of owner independence. But the thing is, we are business owners ourselves too. So, we are going through that process kind of like just like our clients as business owners are doing as well. Um, Now, a lot of owners that we speak to, and I think this is partially for us as well, we are involved in anything and everything in our business. Could be, from hiring or, being the finance department or doing the delivery to the clients or speaking to the clients and helping them solve problems. The thing is, for most small business owners, the activity that they stay most involved in for the longest period of time is sales. I haven't met a single business owner, even the ones that are looking to sell their business in a certain amount of time, that has not been involved or still is involved into the sales part of the business. I just wanted to have today around how do we look at these things as business owners ourselves? What are we doing? What have we done? What are we planning on doing in removing ourselves as founders from our businesses from that sales department? So I have a little bit of an unconventional and unusual way of approaching sales and how the big exit is doing sales, but we can talk a little bit about that later on in the show. First of all, Graham, I might ask you this question. I'm really curious to hear. So, what are the things that maybe you have been doing already or are doing or planning on doing to remove yourself as the CEO and the co-founder of Biswell, to remove yourself from your sales department? I'd love to hear more.
That's such a great question, and there's so many ways you can answer that. But just to contextualize that, I think in an ideal world, you want to remove that owner dependency and that whether it's for sales or other processes as soon as possible. But in the early days of a business, it is really hard. Certainly, the first year or two or three. And I think there's a real danger in removing the owner from that process too soon. So as much as we say, when's the best time to start thinking about owner independence, is like day one of starting a business. Equally, you can't be in business for 30 years and then start thinking about it. The reality is, when you start a business, particularly if it's a new idea or a new concept, is in those first few years, you're searching for, what the VCs and they'd like to call product market fit. In an ideal world, you have a system that says, hey, this is how we generate activity and leads into the funnel. This is how we qualify leads. This is how we convert leads into paying business. Now, there's in today's age, it's like just use an AI agent to do that, or just automate this, or just use a CRM. Now, if it was that easy, everybody would have it right. And the big problem is that if you automate too soon, you can be automating the wrong thing. So until you've found what that real product market fit is, what the product actually looks like, what your customers' real pain points are, and how they're prepared to pay for that, and how you can repeat that and scale that, to be quite frank, you're kind of wasting your time and energy and resources if you try and automate and remove your dependency too soon. So it sounds like a little bit of a paradox. So if we take a step back to first principles, in the early days, it's important, and like from a Biswell point of view, is that you kind of form key relationships and you understand, who your potential target market is. And the real role as a founder, what you're doing is, yes, you're trying to get sales, but you're also really trying to understand, like, what is the real pain point? How do you fine tune? So I think if you go in with this mindset initially saying, how are you fine tuning to build a proposition and a process that can be repeatable when you step out, that's the first thing. So it starts with a mindset of saying, hey, you've got this in the back of your mind, that you've got to position things so clearly, crisply, and simply that you can take a step back. So that's step number one that we've tried to do, is really hone in and experiment and try and find out what that actually looks like. The second thing is and we made a lot of mistakes along the way. You're always looking for the quick win. We tried doing SEO, we tried doing CRM systems, we tried doing all of those things. And the reason they didn't work for us was precisely that, is it was too soon in the journey. We were kind of automating the wrong things. We thought we had product market fit, but we didn't. So you have to let that process, let's kind of mature and fester and ferment a little bit. The second thing, I guess, that we've been doing is kind of thinking, how do we make sales almost everyone in the business's problem? So, whilst one of the things we've done is we have a weekly sales call with the entire team. Okay. Some people are responsible for bringing in leads, some are responsible for converting, some are responsible for fulfilling the client experience. But we bring everybody into that sales call because as a culture, we want everybody in the team to understand how important, like, sales is a lifeblood. It's a sort of gasoline that makes the business run. So, early day founder, we're trying to achieve that, is to get everybody to think about sales. And even from a remuneration point of view, in terms of our team, we think about how can everybody be incentivized. It's not just necessarily the salespeople that need to be based on commission. And then the third thing I'll just mention now, and I'm sure we'll go in a different, a little bit more detail just now, but The other thing we started to do really hard is we've actually got an outsource, let's call it sale mate, that assists us with some of our outreach and what have you. And that's been a really interesting process to go through, because when you have to explain what problem you're solving to a third party, it really forces you as a business owner to actually introspect and think about actually what are you selling. So sometimes it's a really good exercise to go through, is to explain your sales process to a third party or a new team member and all of that, because that forces you to iterate it. So those are just like some initial thoughts. Have we got it right? Absolutely, absolutely not 100% yet. Are we improving every single day and every single week? Absolutely. And I think that's the goal, is you need to know where you're moving towards, even in big organizations. Ultimately, big deals, the CEO will get involved. And you can take that at any macro level. There's certain deals where the president of a country will be there to sign and close the deal. Okay. 99% of the time, the bureaucrats and the administrators and the policymakers and the lawmakers are doing their work. But there will be those big deals that requires the top person to get it. So you can never remove yourself completely, but it's those sort of routine day-to-day things that you want to start thinking about. How can you get 95% of the work automated, and how do you start thinking about that early on? So yeah, at the risk of me waffling on, yeah, those are just some early thought starters.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a couple of things that I'm writing down at this very moment, you know. One of the things that struck me, what you were saying, is like our aim is to make sales everybody's problem or opportunity. Let's call it an
Mm.
opportunity, maybe, which
Yeah.
I find rather interesting. And I'd love to, because this is not how I have been approaching the sales part of
Yeah.
my this business and the previous businesses either. So let's talk a little bit more about that, because I can imagine for a lot of small business owners, along the way we hire people, and mostly we will hire them first. First, we'll have some support, admin support, an executive assistant, someone who's doing planning the meetings, answering the emails, things like that. And then we often kind of start hiring people who are client facing and maybe in charge of the delivery and like offering the program or the service or whatever it is that you're selling to the client, and is that customer facing person. Often at that same time, we'll have our admin support also handling customer inquiries and maybe customer complaints and, like doing all of these things. But that kind of implies that these people that you're hiring at first are not really involved in the sales process at all. Now, you are saying, we're doing this differently. We get everybody involved in the sales process. So just practically, like, how does that work besides doing a weekly sales meeting, which I assume is not like, these are the results and let's move
Yeah.
forward.
I think let me clarify, elaborate on that a little. I think it's there's an important distinction. I think what we're trying to do is not everybody's a salesperson, but if you're trying to create a sales culture, everybody needs to be aware of what that means. So let me use a very simple example. Let's say you are a restaurant. Okay. So what is sales for a restaurant is getting people through the door. So you can take a parochial view that says, hey, the person who's responsible for sales in the restaurant is the person that goes out and, if you're in a touristy area, hands out those little flyers and whatever, and says, come and have a meal. Okay. Or the person who's doing the Google ads. But ultimately, a restaurant sales experience, it's about getting people in the door. It's about them experiencing a great meal. Okay. And it's also about them wanting to come back. Okay. So if you view sales as like a once-off thing and then move out, that's one thing. But actually, sales is about building your brand, it's building your reputation, it's building a great customer experience. So even in a restaurant, you can go there, you can have a great ambiance, a great meal, the food's great, and let's say, for example, the time comes to pay your bill, your check at the end of the meal, and you kind of have had your dessert and you want to go out and you sit and you wait there. 25 minutes for the waiter or whatever to bring you that little card machine to pay your bill. Like that kind of experience at the end of a meal can completely ruin your experience, okay, at a restaurant. And it's the same in business. And that's why when we say we want everybody to understand or be a salesperson, it's about that. If you're the administrator, if you send out an invoice, if you're an accountant, you send out an invoice which is poorly worded, okay, um, or whatever the case might be, you're the receptionist picking up the phone. If you kind of just let the phone ring 20 times when somebody's got an inquiry, you can giving away my Gen X age. Nobody uses the phone anymore, but the same applies to emails and that. That's, I guess, what we mean when we say sales is everybody's problem. It doesn't mean everyone has a necessarily a sales KPI, but that I think is critical. And hopefully that example kind of gives a bit of context as to how we think about it.
Yeah, and I think it's a great example and definitely a valuable takeaway for business owners to have a small team, like 5 or 10 people inside the team. This is generally like the business owners that we work with in preparing their business for sale. I love how you build in that principle of like it doesn't matter what your role is in the business, there is a part of it that will drive sales. If you answer the phone the way that drives repeat business, or it drives a client away from us because that experience isn't up to standard to what makes a client come back to us. So I love that tying in of a lot of small business owners. I mean, you have like a weekly meeting where you get together with sometimes even all of your team because it's so small and mighty. And like having that practice of tying it in as like everybody's role individually to sales and sales targets and how they influence sales, whether that's bringing in a new client, whether that's servicing an existing client, whether that's upselling to an existing client, whether it's following up with an existing client. Everybody has their little piece of that chain where they carry a certain sales responsibility. So just making that, link clear in, every, if you have a weekly meeting or something like that with your team, I think that's really powerful. And it's definitely something when I have been building my team in the past, probably not something that I've done as actively as what you are saying, although we were a very driven sales, like
Yeah.
sales organization, but I can't remember having conversations where I expressed that so clearly to everybody in the
Maybe
team.
just
And
something
I
I'll
love
give
that.
one more example, just very practical, what we're trying to do. Is sales is never about what you're selling, it's about the need that the client or prospective client has. So one of the things we try to do with our team, from the receptionist to the person answering emails is to get them to ask questions. Okay, so it's very practical, but that question could be so we do business valuations, but we're not a business broker. We don't buy and sell businesses. So if we get an inbound inquiry that says, hey, I want to sell my business, can you match me with buyers? Okay, so the simplistic answer is no, we can't. Okay, end of question, end of sales funnel. But if the receptionist or the lady answering the email says, I'm sorry, we're not a business broker, but okay, why are you asking the question, and what are you trying to achieve? I mean, I'm using a silly example that might open up a question to say, okay, cool, actually I'm frustrated in my business, I'm looking for a little bit more freedom, in which case we'd say go chat to Lynn and the big exit. So by asking a question is something that can actually help you and help everyone in the team realize that sales is more than just the owner's role. So that's a very practical and simple things. Whether for some people that works, some people it doesn't, but for us, it certainly helps drive that culture change.
Makes absolute sense, and I really love these two takeaways in like making sales everybody's problem. Although I don't like to use the word problems, everybody's opportunity or
Opportunity.
everybody's responsibility, maybe. I really love that. And then the second point that you're mentioning in like whenever there's a client contact, at first is just asking questions to see what brings them to you and why are they there and why are they asking what they are asking, because it might potentially be not the right kind of client for you, but when you ask a couple of questions, all of a sudden, the cards are a little bit different on the table, and there's an opportunity to help this client, even maybe with a problem they didn't know that they had in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So I really love that approach. Um, at the beginning, when we did the introduction of the show, I talked a little bit more about how I have a little bit more of an unusual and maybe not so common approach to sales. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because to me, the approach that we take in sales is not uncommon or unusual, but I notice in the business world that we are in, where we have a lot of service-based businesses who are offering services to clients, and where sales still often is a person's job or a human to human job. I think the way that we approach sales is unusual in that aspect. Um, I've always to build a sales approach that has freedom in mind as much as possible. And that basically means removing myself from the sales conversation as early as possible, if not from the beginning, which is very uncommon for how most people approach sales and how most founders approach sales. And I believe there's a value to having conversations with what you think your ideal client is, just to understand what it is that they're looking for and what they need. But as soon as kind of like that process is over, my goal and my aim has always been to build an automated sales approach. Now, it takes
Mhm.
a lot longer to build something that really works,
Mhm.
because you're trying a lot of things that are happening in a virtual space and you don't really get direct feedback from clients. So when you speak to a client and you miss hitting their pain point, they'll tell you or you figure it out. If you do sales in a more automatic way, you don't get that feedback. The only
Mhm.
feedback that you're getting is, oh, I've sent out, 2000, an email to 2000 people. How many have read it? How many have opened it? How many have clicked through? Like the approach is longer, because you don't get that direct feedback from clients. Yet it's a sales approach that I love to work with. And I think this also comes down to the kind of business owner and founder that you are as a person. So we, in the way that we approach sales at the Big Exit, and you'll notice this when you get onto our website, for example, there's no phone number there. You cannot
Mhm.
pick up the phone and call us. And the reason for that is because we don't do one-to-one virtual sales meetings. We just don't
Yeah.
do that. Is that right? Is that wrong? No reason. It's just how we are building the business. We don't offer Zoom calls to have a discovery meeting or like hey, let's jump on a call and see how we can help each other. We don't do that. That's not in our funnel, or that's not in the way that we do sales. So if you don't do that, selling is a lot harder, and you really need to understand what your customer needs, wants, what they are concerned about, what they're looking for, what their intent is, why they come to your virtual shop, what makes them buy, what makes them not buy, how, like all of these kinds of things. So the beauty is that once this starts working, you have a sales everyday system that does not require any salespeople. It doesn't require any visits. It doesn't require any Zoom calls. It's very lean and very efficient. The downside is it takes a lot of time to build, longer than I think in the way that Graham is building his sales funnel and sales team and sales approach. I don't think there's a right or wrong. It's more like what works for you, what works for your business, what works for your kind of clients, and how do you want to set things up.
Maybe if I can
So I don't know
add to
if
that,
you've got
Lynn,
any
I think
thoughts
the one
about that,
benefit of the
Graham.
Sorry, I'm talking over you. I
But
think the one benefit of that approach is, and every business and product is somewhat different, but it's a very data-led approach. So, as you say, what are we all trying to do here? Is we're trying to build systems and processes. So what that approach does is it actually instills a scientific method quite early on. So what that approach requires, as you say, in the back end, we both iterating in different ways. One might be direct feedback loop from clients. In your model, though, it's probably much more data. What's the data saying? What's your open rate on your email? What's the conversion rate? And if those are not ticking up, you're not sitting back and saying, "Oh, I've automated. It must just do its job." You are taking the role of iterating that and making fine tuning and tweaks in the background. And I think absolutely that method works incredibly well in certain business, particularly if you're selling something online or selling something which is, as you say, group based or product based. Sometimes that's the only way that works. E-commerce stores, for argument's sake, they use that strategy a lot. It's about figuring
or
out the
software
the
businesses,
algorithm. Yeah.
SaaS
So
businesses.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of like our a little bit more maybe unusual way, specifically in a service-based industry. Like, I mean, we are not brokers at the Big Exit either. Like, we basically sell information and a training and a program and a mastermind to help business owners prepare for their exit. But we obviously also get into contact with people who are like, I'm looking to sell. Are you a broker? Can you find me buyers? Just like
Yeah.
you have as well with Bizval, for example. So, um, and I think, for example, with brokers, their sales model, which is a service-based sales model, it's very tailor-made. The offering is very tailor-made as well. So they prefer to jump on a call and make a tailor-made proposal, just like, maybe website developers would do, or other
Hmm.
service-based businesses or financial planners or, these kinds of businesses. Now, one of the things that I learned to do is kind of like you need to be able to package what you're selling, whether that's a service or a product. You need to be able to
Yeah.
package that. And then if you can package it, it's easier to sell it in a more automated and a more, procedure driven kind of way. But that's probably a conversation for another time. I feel like, I mean, I don't feel like it. It looks like we're running out of time.
It's amazing how quickly
Um,
30 minutes goes.
what I'm taking away from what you are saying, Graham, because I mean, this conversation was meant to be just an open conversation of like, what are we doing to remove ourselves from sales in our own businesses, as owner independence is so crucial when you're building a sellable and valuable business. And what I'm taking away from you, I mean, we have a very different approach. None of it
Yeah.
is good or bad. It's just the preference that you're taking. And what I'm taking away from your approach, Graham, is like, I love the sales meetings and how you make sales everybody's
It's a
not
culture.
problem, responsibility, everybody's
Yeah.
responsibility within the team, even if they're not having the official role of being, a sales rep or a sales manager, or something like that. So where you're doing that part in business. Is there anything that you take away from, like how I'm approaching the sales part?
Yeah. I think my key takeout there is one is we both have the same end goal of saying build a system and a process. How we go about building that system and process is different. But I love the fact that your process is very data led, and you use that data to optimize the process. And I think that's really, really important because it's not sentiment and feeling led. It's cold hard facts. Okay, it's either going to convert or not. So I think that's one of the key takeouts from the way that you're going about it.
Awesome. Great. Well, I hope if you're watching this or have watched this or, watching the replay, that this has been a valuable conversation. We kind of winged it and decided to just have an open conversation of about what we are doing. So I also would love to hear your feedback on an episode like this because I think this is kind of the first or the second time in all of our 20 episodes that we have had so far where we just wanted to share what we were doing and kind of, share that with those of you who are also going through that process as business owners. As we like to, how do you say that in English, Graham? Like practice what you preach, right?
Exactly, that's it.
And with owner independence and creating, that sales system that works, as you also can see from Graham's experience and mine, there's a lot of trial and error. There's not like one thing that works and like this is the framework how you make yourself independent from sales in your own business. There's not such a thing. There is like just trial and error and trying different things and see what works and see what sticks. Not doing it too early and not doing it too late, because too early might mean that you're missing valuable feedback from your clients. That is crucial to still, develop your product further onwards, but also not too late. And too late might mean by the time that you're thinking of selling your business, if that's the time that you're going to remove yourself from sales, that might be a little bit late. So I think that's kind of like the general wrap up for this episode. Unless there's anything you want to add to that, Graham, I'm just gonna go through the outro of the episode.
I think that's all. I mean, this is we can have hundreds of conversations around this, but it's just good to, actually, anybody who says, yeah, it's a secret formula, and provided you drink from this, you're going to have eternal youth or eternal sales, is probably being a bit disingenuous. But that's it from me.
100%. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Graham, today and taking the time. So that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Master Your Exit Live show. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you're leaving with some valuable insights to help you prepare for your big exit. Now, remember, you can catch the replay of this episode and all of the other 19 episodes on our website at thebigexit.co/master your exit shows, or listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform. Now, I also love to hear from you. Send in your exit questions by next week's show by heading over to the website bigexit.co/master your exit signups. You can sign up there and send us your exit related questions so we can answer them on any of the future episodes. We'll be back next week, Tuesday at 7 a.m. in Los Angeles, 10 a.m. in New York, or 3 p.m. in London. And we'll share more tips, expert interviews, tools to help you master your exit. Until then, keep building, keep preparing, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for being here.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Graham.